Yeah.
Hey, it looks like
Hey, everybody.
looks like the Brady Bunch.
I know.
Do you guys have it on the like 4-up view?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Can we like toss a ball between each other and like catch it and can drop it on Pete's head?
Say our names while we do
For
it.
the dunk. Boom.
I love it. Well, do we want to get some of our jitters out, small talk, or we just want to dive right in, pull back the curtain, go down the rabbit hole?
Hey, Leah.
Hey, Josh.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good. Well, now that that's out of the way, let's dive in.
That's
So,
Can you guys hear me all right?
yes, I am interested in switching long distance carriers.
like a Call of Duty tournament, man.
You dropped your Xbox controller, bro.
There might be some TA guys watching, dude. Watch your mouth. TA guys
that's
like this
true.
stuff. Look, it's cordless.
Yeah.
I can move around.
And trade with two hands.
I take the pads off, right? It's faster.
You can Wyckoff
better.
with two hands.
Jesus, boys, let's go. There's a lady
Hey.
here.
She told me to make that joke.
I mean, I remember from somebody's video that I think ladies Wyckoff too.
I don't know who that was. Might have been my evil twin. He's been spreading a lot of disinformation.
Oh, here we go. Here
He's
we
a
go.
deep fake.
I don't know why I get blamed and censored for. Anyway.
You just got the pirate mouth, but you've been good lately.
I know.
All right. Well, we do have the makings of a great morning show, but let's pivot. Let's dive in. The reason we wanted to have this call is because there's a particular topic that has come up, and every time it does, it just breathes life and fire and healthy debate into all of us. And that is this concept, I think, of talking specifically about Wyckoff and some of these concepts that the market may or may not be moving under some other nefarious intention. We've had quite a bit of debate lately in the garden about what actually moves the market. And so I think that, we can kind of go round robin. I don't know how we want to just like lead into the subject, but I know that there's some different perspectives on the call. I know that some people put more emphasis on the personal responsibility and the overall net effect of a lot of monkeys at their levers, kind of feeling the same things, doing the same actions. And that there's also the perspective that we're actually being duped or suckered into taking those actions. So I will start the first volley by just, throwing the topic out in the middle and see who wants to dive on it.
Well, I guess I was the one that kind of came back and while I agree with your, kind of take on Wyckoff and that the market does move in that kind of in that pattern, I tend to attribute it more to greed, fear and greed, and just human psychology and retail trader behavior, and that the market doesn't need to manipulate that. It's actually almost easier not to manipulate it, and it plays out as predictable as anything in the market. If there's one thing you can predict, it's fear and greed. And if there's one thing you can predict, it's how retail traders will react when fear and greed take over. And so my take is by making, whether it's a cabal or some, a few big companies, whatever it is, by putting the responsibility in a group of elites, I believe we kind of remove the responsibility from ourselves to recognize our own fear and greed and take it into account when we're making those decisions. So that was just my take, not a complete different take than what you had, but just maybe a different way of framing who's behind it.
I just want to understand, Josh, what you're saying a little bit better. Why is it that by blaming or attributing it to a cabal, does that, how do you see that obscuring our own relationship with fear and greed. Because when I see it, whether it's a cabal or it's just like the way that all of man moves together, we just can't quite see that. Either way, I would think it would still invite us to look at how we're participating in reaction to that.
Yeah, probably so. I guess for me, to me, when we say there's this group of people manipulating the market, we are then powerless, right? I mean, if they're manipulating the market and we're not the ones manipulating the market, then we are now powerless to their decisions. And we're just on a ride. And when they get together and decide to tank Bitcoin, they'll tank Bitcoin and then they'll buy some more. And then we're just kind of at the whims of this group, whoever this is. So while we do still maybe need to confront our own fear and greed, I just feel like it's much easier to say, well, what difference does it make? If I don't have any power, if I'm powerless as an individual in this market, I just feel like it's not this personal responsibility soapbox. It's more just, hey, you're actually way more important than that. You're not powerless in this market. And when you realize that it's not some group or cabal manipulating the market, but it's just retail traders and human beings trading very predictably on fear and greed, then you can actually do something about it and change. So I don't know that I would say we don't have to confront it, but I would say there's much less enthusiasm or impetus to change when you feel powerless. And maybe I'm making some assumptions there that we feel powerless.
I was reading up before this call on the Composite Man, which was a heuristic device that was set forth by Richard Wyckoff as, you can think of it like a thought experiment almost. It's not saying that this is a concrete reality. However, he was saying it is beneficial as a trader to look at, and he was saying all stocks. He was talking about the stock market. He said the entire stock market could be looked at as if it were planned, executed, intended by a single interest. And that all of the different stocks together collectively could be seen heuristically as that one playing out of that one interest. And so it is interesting to me, and from these conversations, I've been thinking about this, that maybe the composite man, that's exactly what he's saying, that we are the composite man, that it's this one individual who, as it were, is the embodiment of all of the different emotions across all the different stocks. And it is, as it were, our greater self doing these predictable patterns. That is an interesting line of thought, because it's both empowering and disempowering, because you realize that you are a much smaller stitch in a very big tapestry that is the composite. And it's kind of moving, it's doing these things. We can think about it, we can get in, and that's what he was trying to teach, is you can get in the flow of that. You can understand, like, what is the intention. If price is taken off and gone up by 500%, the composite man wants to pull back so they can accumulate and then take it up 500% again. And so I guess I've thought a lot less lately about there being some smoky back room with 4 or 5 big interests that are like muhaha, and more like it is a way that we can approach the market, realizing that it's not just our goodwill or our do we want, are the bulls going to overcome the bears? That's what you're always hearing on YouTube. Like, do we have it in us to like fight the fight and take the price up higher? Well, maybe the composite man is never going to let the price go up higher, because the actual structure of a market psychology is such that if you go up by 500%, you got to come down by 30, 40, 50%. And so I don't know. Yeah. Pete, what do you think about at night when you have your composite man nightmares? What's chasing you down the hallway?
Lobsters. So,
dude, snappy response.
Check this out. This just came to me. This is some freestyle. I had some other stuff planned, but this just came to me. I have been recently starting to hunt lobsters, and to do that, you have a mask on, right? And so I've snorkeled a bunch, like in the Caribbean and other spots where it's easy to snorkel with like tours where they've already pre-treated a mask. So when they hand you the mask, you can see clearly, right? I didn't know that there was a trick to do that. And so for the last week, I'm like going through snorkeling for these lobsters, watching my peers just drag buckets of lobsters out, and I can't do shit. And I'm right there, standing right next to them, and I'm like messing with my goggles, can't get comfortable, all this stuff. Okay, so I've missed 3. Today is my 3rd lobster that I've missed. But so something changes. I did some research about what makes fog, right? Why do your masks fog? So it's the heat from your body, and the more of it is that your masks come with the silicone coating from the manufacturer, so that they're in transit, that they don't get scratched. Okay, and so the way you fix that is you take a lighter and you burn it. You take your $100 goggles that you just bought and you burn them. You burn the silicone off so you can see. Okay, is that the manufacturer's fault? No, it's not his fault. It's not some conspiracy theory to keep me away from lobsters. I thought it was, but I'm not special, and it's nobody going like, God, let's just strew Pete over down in Ecuador, his lobster ambitions, let's get those things, and so think about that in crypto. There's nobody trying to keep you out of these gains. It's our own greed. And it's, what it is that price is, information is supposed to be included into the price. Perfect information, that's an assumption, right? But it's not, or maybe it is, and if we have the right information, we don't make the right decisions. So there's a lot of other things going on, and we move as a herd. That's what creates bubbles. And so I don't think it's, do I think that there's a bunch of people with money and then they can make some phone calls and maybe do some stuff on some of the altcoins? Sure, maybe those volumes are small enough, but is it on a bigger scale? It's just reading the stupidity of man to have their greed, not do the research to make their decisions be in the right decision or not, right? So even if you have perfect information, you might not make the right decision. And 9 times out of 10, you're not even looking for the information, you're just acting on greed. So I'm going less and less. I am a conspiracy theorist just by entertainment, because I have a lot of time in my lifestyle. I can read a lot. I can spend a lot of time online and go down rabbit holes. But the more I learn about markets and psychology of markets, you're just playing off of the whales or the education, right? We never get taught how to be a rich dad. We get forced into being a poor dad. That whole rich dad, poor dad, it's not fundamentals. We don't learn economics in school. So those are the whales, the people that made it to college, however you got there and got the golden ticket and made it to college and then continued your education, and not education in psychology or whatever field you want, like financial education. That's what keeps you dumb. That's what keeps you on the wrong side of the money, reacting in greed. Because a lot of the stuff with markets is counterintuitive. Right? And the counterintuitive, that you don't just naturally become a good trader. You have to trick yourself into reading these stupid, boring books into just making your brain think differently than 98% of them. That's the only way you make money, and to see bubbles come early, right? Be an early reactor, not a slow reactor. So we overreact in the long term and underreact in the short term. The pandemic didn't happen. We didn't react to the pandemic for a long time because we didn't want to believe it. Like, no, dude, I want my kids to go to school. Do you know the impact that this is going to personally have on my life? You selfish pandemic bastards. That's the same thing in markets, right? Nobody's nefariously going after you. Nobody's taking my lobsters. So anyway, that's my spiel. Over.
I love it. And I'm going to keep the ball rolling. Leah, what's your lobster story?
I was just hunting for my lobster analogy story and came up empty. Okay, but I do have some thoughts. So one is I hold it equally likely. I hold it equally likely there's some plan manipulation and that there's a composite man reaction. And I just keep checking in my own experience whether that matters. And so far it hasn't yet. So for example, I can't deny the fact that like Elon Musk isn't dumb. He knows if he comes out and says something, the market's going to change. So that's not even a behind the doors kind of manipulation. That's a out in public manipulation. And so if he can do that stuff, then there's probably some of that going on somewhere. If we can manipulate things, I mean, I can just check from my own experience. I manipulate all the time. When I'm really honest, I manipulate people around me to like me or include me or whatever. I try to get discounts on my taxes, and I just have to assume that, you know, everybody's kind of motivated by like my own fear of death on some level is driving some insecurity. And therefore it's going to drive me to be greedy and selfish at times. So I'm just assuming we're all kind of acting that way. The thing I find empowering, and maybe this is kind of similar to what Josh was saying, is that it doesn't really matter, but I need to look at the only way that I can be manipulated is if I let myself play into those patterns. And so whether it's being driven by certain people or it's just this composite reaction, like people can't hold like, oh my God, Bitcoin's so high, my nervous system is freaking out, let me just sell some. And then we watch the market go down because we just have nervous system limits. Whether it's that or it's, you know, somebody driving it, doesn't really matter. Can I sit through a pullback? What happens for me when that's happening? Am I invested in things I believe in long enough to stick out through some of those scary moments? Yeah.
Any deep thoughts percolating in that beard over there?
I don't know. I'm just, I guess, focusing on that line that Leah kind of started with. I don't know how you said it, but you're kind of holding them equal, or, you know, that's an interesting line. I think that's probably a healthy place to be, right? Like this idea that as much as I might be frustrated or disappointed with someone, continually saying and thinking that there's some cabal that controls the financial markets in the world and they've coordinated this attack on crypto, or they're somehow, right, like it could be equally as damaging for me to focus on that and constantly get irritated by that and try to argue that there's not. And so I do like the thought of kind of getting in a neutral stance on both of those and saying, yes, I don't think that's what's happening, but to your point, does it matter for me personally if I'm focused on how it's affecting me and my ability to control, or maybe in your words the other night, embrace my own fear and greed? So that's what I was thinking. Hopefully that's as deep as you were expecting.
Yeah, it's mustache deep. I wanted beard deep, but we'll keep it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Leah, Vince, and I had a whole conversation before this one where we were really getting through a couple layers of what crypto is and isn't. And I appreciate conversations like this one because I find that even though I think the YouTube audience enjoys having a rational explanation for why the narrative they wanted to see fell apart, like we want to have these causal relationships that maybe it is Composite Man, we're all the ones driving it, but by personifying it and saying, here's why we didn't go to the moon, it was because this is how these campaigns run. That's one side of it. And then there's this other side of it that to me is the much more interesting aspect, is that, and we've talked about this amongst us before, that we have kind of tangled together these two very different intentions or opportunities. We have this market space, this free market that's unregulated, that's doing textbook Wyckoff patterns, regardless of how they happen, but it's tangled up with this narrative, this hope, this set of tools and technologies that I feel are attracted to because they might help us as a population move into some new patterns that aren't as prone to the same patterns, whether they're manipulation or not. That by decentralizing things, by putting trust in, I love, this was one of Leah and Vince's comments earlier, you can't trust anyone, but you can trust everyone. that we are drawn to this space for that opportunity. It's just really unfortunate that the way we interface with it is by looking at price charts and thinking, oh, if you're going to be interested in crypto, you need to learn TA and learn these market cycles. When actually, I think the bigger opportunity here is for the whales and the krill alike to now coexist in a space where we are building systems that exchange value as their core operating system. And it's an opportunity for us as humans to say, what do we value then? Because when I look at the current market, we're pegging everything to the dollar. So it's not a new system. There's nothing new value that we're changing and moving around. So if Bitcoin and all of these other, promising technologies are just new ways to think about and abstract the dollar, I think we're missing that invitation for us collectively as a planet, elites and little guys alike, to say, what do we actually value? And can we use these tools to build the foundation for a future that we actually want to live in, that will have, clean air, clean water, access to these things? And so I just wanted to bring this into the conversation as well, because when we look at manipulation and we get into this like us against them, it feels like this battle for control or this battle to not be taken advantage of. And I also don't know if it's a very healthy mindset to be in versus a more inclusive, future-looking, going beyond the market and trading, but actually talking about, these L1 blockchains that we're all just exchanging the ticker symbols. Like, what are we actually building on them? How are we going to use them in our lives so that it's transparent? We're not even talking about crypto. We're just talking about this new way that I can send my kids to school or whatever it might be. So I don't know. I just want to introduce that in this conversation, because I would also love to hear from you guys, like, beyond the forces at play in the market, who is guiding the future of this technology? Is it us? Is it elites? Is it, regulation? Is it the actual project teams and their visions? And how do you actually plan to engage in this space in a meaningful way? Over.
I have a thought.
Mhm.
So one thing I think I heard you say was, like, maybe you didn't say these exact words, but that maybe nothing's changing yet. And I see that differently. I see a lot of all of us, but also a lot of young people participating in markets, feeling empowered around their money. I see like a change in consciousness starting to happen around who's actually responsible for money. And crypto's inviting that conversation. And money is a synonym for, maybe energy or power or impact in the world. And I think it's a little early, but the mindset is changing, and it might take a while for our mindset to go from where we were to a place where we're creating this new world. And we actually need to play out our fear and our greed. We need to apply the way we looked at old stocks to the new charts before we can start to see that this is a bit different. I'm not a trader, I'm a buy and holder, partially because I think this time is going to take a while, and that there's not a big rush for us to be the more enlightened versions of ourselves, that we kind of need to do it day by day. And that 4 or 5 years from now, there might be the same, like the cell phone revolution, where we're in a different world, but it didn't necessarily seem that way day after day.
Yeah, that would be, I would be very much aligned with that view, especially the idea that this is a long game, and the fear of missing out is so real. I just don't feel that. I feel like we have at least a few years, maybe several years, and there's potentially multiple washouts in that time where it's almost just a reset. I don't know if everything gets reset, but it's almost like the promise of this technology in this space is so big that it's going to take just some real time and kind of washing out and kind of flushing things that we thought were going to happen, and all of a sudden it's not going to happen. And then, like Leah says, I think we just wake up one day and we're just in this completely different infrastructure as it relates to maybe money and maybe technology and how we exchange information. And I think that long view, though, definitely removes the edge, right? Because I didn't have that early. I don't know about you guys, but when I came into the space, it was like, if I don't get on the train right now, I'm going to get left at the station. And oh my God, can we liquidate anything? Is there assets we can get unfrozen? Because, you know, I need to get my hands, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. How many can I get? You know, just that whole thing. And the place I am now, which is very, I mean, I think Leah articulated really well, is just so much more peaceful, very, very excited, but not worried every night about, you know, did I miss my chance to get Bitcoin with some number in front of it?
In fact, I just want to say, I think that FOMO, there's not enough mine, like I need to get mine, is kind of a mental framework of the old economy. And so I think there's enoughness and sufficiency and abundance in the new economy. And so it's taking like practicing this new mindset to even give birth to it.
But do you think it almost needs to die though? I mean, I don't know if this is where you're going but like, I just feel like it's such the opposite of that right now. Maybe you disagree, Leah, but like, it feels like it's not abundance right now, with just the narrative and the energy that dominates crypto. And maybe it's what we're seeing in crypto, but it's almost like that needs to die. Like that needs to run its course, or it needs to get washed out. I don't know what you think about that. Or does it just kind of evolve into abundance?
Well, I think in one sense, I said this the other to Vince after our last crypto garden call, like the gathering. I was like, I've never been in a room, I don't think, with that many men talking about their feelings. And I think it's such a good thing, because it's like this stuff is in there, but the fact that we're seeing it so out in the open means we're actually able to deal with it. I think it's been happening. The fear and greed's been going on a long time, but we're actually facing it now. So I think some healing is happening. It just looks like we're seeing ourselves for real, and we're like, oh crap, there's a lot here to deal with. But I think it's a healing process.
I think to the point of you were making that it needs to die first, I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that it's so early that the people that really need the philosophy of Bitcoin, the philosophy of a decentralized ledger, Ecuadorians can't figure out how to get money into crypto. They can't even buy it. If the people that need it, they can't get it, you know? And so I think that it depends on where you're from, right? And it depends on, like, it's easy to get caught up in the price action. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly in that, like, if you're looking at this as a long game, it does take the edge off. That's a really good way to look at it, because I don't care what the price is of Bitcoin. I just know that over time, it's going to work. And you look at the El Salvador experiment, that's light years ahead of what anybody thought there was going to be 6 months ago. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw a nation adopting Bitcoin. Nobody was talking about that. And all of a sudden we have a young president come through that gets it and comes in and boom, and gambles it, rolls the dice, and now we have it. So there's a big experiment. And strategically, that couldn't have been that many nations to go first. There's a lot of factors that let that happen. They didn't have any sanctions, strategically located. They don't really have a military. They never had gold, right? There's a lot of geopolitical things that, like, why that popped up where it did. Nobody cares about El Salvador. Sorry, they don't, you know? And so maybe that's why it happened. Historically, financially, banks don't care about El Salvador. I'm not saying I don't care about, but big institutions, they don't care. You know, and that's to the president's point. They're like, what about upsetting the American financial system? He's like, well, look around you. We're underbanked. 80% of it it's not working. And so to try something new, that's the hope, man. That's what keeps me excited about it. And to not think that that's here and that we're way ahead of schedule. I mean, come on. I got here in February. We're moving pretty good.
Yeah, it does feel like there is a huge experiment that's happening right now, and because it started in a way that the opening sentence of this whole book that we're writing together was one, I think, of optimistically putting in front of people the thought experiment of what if we did things differently? And what if we take what we've learned from an entire history of humanity and we tried to actually design a way that we can interface with each other that addresses the problems that we've now studied and put that forward. And, Bitcoin was the first, chapter of that, but it was really just getting the ball rolling. I know there's a lot of Bitcoin maximalists that just kind of see that as the one and only kind of, foundation. But I think that what we're seeing with these other projects is that they're taking that first proposition and seeing if they can, solve different parts of it or come at it from different angles so that we can ultimately have a new playing field that is more, and I love, Leah, this word that you just used. I've never heard it before. I want a bumper sticker of it, but enoughness. Can we see the world not from that scarcity lens, but from that lens of just how things are distributed? And I don't know if we have it in us, in our human nature, to actually, open up those enclosures and be willing as, a strata of society with elites and, all the whole mixture. I don't know if we're able to take those big, bold steps into that future, but it's really compelling. It's engaging, and it's a source of hope in a time when I think we really need it, to conceive that humans have the ability to rethink the way that we're behaving and acting now, and to start taking some of these steps. And if it takes, poor El Salvador just getting, the arrows in its back because it rode out first, but then the next country that kind of moves in, learns those lessons and takes the next step. I think it is a long game. There's nothing that's going to come out overnight that's a product that now I don't have to use a bank anymore, or a country doesn't have to be tied into the, US dollar economy. But again, just in my thinking about this and my activity in this space, it's a lot less now about the individual, I'm going to invest and I'm just going to, get money without working. And it's a lot more about, digging into these value questions, because if we don't do that collectively, the ones who are doing that are the same interests that were the last system. And we were talking about this earlier, Leah. I'm going to just try and say it one more time, that I see the old money system as just the tail end of the same story, that humans got together, I think, with the best overall interests at heart. And there were still all the different stratas of society and things to attend to. But we got to now see what happens over time with a large economic vehicle that's rooted in analog methods. And so now that we're stepping into a digital age, and that's really all crypto is, I don't even think we should be using the word crypto blanketly to describe this new modality of technology. But I do feel that if there aren't conversations like this one, where we are questioning what are our values, that these systems are just going to be used to kind of abridge that last chapter and make it digital. And the value that's going to get moved around is not necessarily my values or your values. It's going to be some other value set. And we either, get in there and get messy and get involved, or we just sit back, but then we don't get to be, pointing a finger saying, hey, you wronged me, because we never stood up for what we believed in the first place.
Yes.
It's like smart money, right? The difference between smartphones and dumb money and smart money, like digitally, right? When you have money that can do things, it changes things. So if money can be accounted for just inherently because it's digital, that takes out a lot of the human element of wrongdoing or corruption, right? So just in the that it's has a brain versus a piece of paper and has consensus. You know, if you can't trust anybody, you have to trust everyone with consensus, you know, then that inherently makes the whole system more honest. And if you look around the globe, and especially in the manipulated parts of the world, you know, where they have a lot of natural resources, but they have more poverty, you know, because the wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. The reason it is that is because they own all of the systems of control. They print the money. You can't beat the people that print the money. It's impossible. They can pay for the lawyers forever. They print the money and they have the lawyers and they make the laws. And so, I mean, from a philosophy standpoint, it's the only chance we have to hit the reset button, is to reset the money. Because if all of the power is inevitably, everything you say is follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, whether it's climate change or oil or whatever else, whether we're using, however we're powering our vehicles, or how, you know, you said, what's going to power this? The market's going to power this. If the price of solar panels is 50 times more than the price of a barrel of oil, people are going to use a barrel of oil until the market drives it closer to reality. Same with crypto, until it's a reality where these guys can, at the education level X, can have technology X and access currency Y. It's not going to work, but when it does work, it's smart money all of a sudden. And so that technology leap is going to be an equalizer, I think, because it's going to be a lot, not just a piece of paper with a serial number. It's going to have some conscious behind it, and some, hopefully, a little bit more truth than the oldest system that is the only system we have, right? It doesn't make it fair. It's just the one we have.
I love that. I just, as you were talking, I was thinking, I hadn't thought about this before, but in the old system, we could also say fear and greed was centralized, you know, in the 1%. We could see it that way. And now what's happening with this distributed system is we're seeing the distributed fear and greed. And all of us who are participating are suddenly, because like you said, when you said, you know, who's printing the money has the power. In this new system, we're all becoming more responsible for what we're invested in, what money we're using, what we're holding. And in that, we're seeing ourselves as those who are printing the money, in a sense. And then we're distributing fear and greed, we're distributing responsibility. And maybe that's one of the reasons it's so uncomfortable and painful right now, is because that responsibility and all those human nature type emotions are spreading out among this distributed network. And so we're just a mirror for the technology and vice versa.
I think you also have to look at how stressed out you guys are in America as well with COVID. You know, if you look at it in an economic standpoint, middle-class America is in a tough way, right? And then you sprinkle on a little pandemic on there, and all of a sudden you have to work at home with your kids because the kids can't go to school. I was just recently back there, and anybody with kids was about this close to just throwing in the towel. Like, this isn't worth it. I don't know how this happened, but, you know, and to manage a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and be the daycare with no school and be responsible to be the education, it just put everything in the pressure cooker, you know? And so then you sprinkle on that 1,000% returns. Of course, it's going to hit the gas pedal on greed, you know? And then maybe you got leveraged too far. Like, Americans aren't known for being leveraged, right? We don't ever over leverage ourselves. Maybe we over leverage ourselves on something that's more volatile than any asset we've ever got to play with ever. Right? The reason that you can see so much fear and greed is because no one's had a 10,000% return. When the last time you got that kind of return without doing something illegal? You know, never. And so you've never been able to see on a broad market sense this much volatility. And what does volatility do? It oscillates the fear and greed index more, right? How much is the fear and greed index in the stock market like this, right? Because who's going to return, you know? So you sprinkle in the world the pandemic, and then that just tips the cup, right? So if you were already not saving money and you're already living paycheck to paycheck, you're already stressed out, your kids are maybe, you know, C students, you're trying to push them up to B students, and then you have to be their teacher and go to school. Give me some Bitcoin help. Come on. Yeah, it's set up for the perfect storm, you know, especially with zero regulation. And then here comes the perfect storm. And so I think that's where, you know, you just see this blind greed. My friend Luis, he just heard about Bitcoin. He owns a head shop. I'm accepting Bitcoin. I set up a wallet, and I'm like, I'm buying all this stuff. I'm like, don't buy anything. You're coming to visit me next weekend. I'll tell you, I'll set you up. We'll go through all this stuff. We'll get you enrolled in the garden. Here's what we do. I just bought Matic. Like, fuck, dude, you don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is. I try to know about stuff, and I don't even know what that is. Like, I know what the price is. I know I've made a little bit of money off of it. It's in the top whatever, but do you really know what that is? You don't even know. And you make $500 a month, and you just threw 20 bucks at something you have no idea what it is, what the market's doing or what. And that's just, even if you had the information, which he doesn't, would you make the right decision? Probably not. You know, you're playing with fire. So I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox. Over. Jeez.
So is there any scenario in any of your minds where perhaps putting fear and greed in the hands of everybody ends more poorly than having fear and greed concentrated in the hands of a few, just to borrow kind of that narrative? Like, has anybody ever considered that like your buddy Luis, who makes $500 a month or whatever, he can now blow that? And I mean, I guess you could argue he could do that in a lot of different ways, but, you know, is there another side to this that we should consider, is my question. Or is the narrative just, this is good and it's got to be good because it's decentralized and there's consensus? Y'all think about that at all?
Well, I have sort of an adjacent line of thought that I think touches in with that in a couple places, and that is, I've been trying to figure out what the appeal is in this space, right? Like, people see how maybe it's sort of like a carnival. I always make this analogy. It's like a carnival, and you see the person walking out with the big teddy bear. That's your friend who bought in, you know, March of last year, and holy crap, they never have to work again. I want in on that too. And so now I'm in a space where I am navigating my own fear and greed. I am given that responsibility, and I also am given that opportunity to, you know, maybe get a big teddy bear of myself or for myself. And I try and balance that. And I'm trying to weave this together with what you're saying, Josh, because I think that there is a danger here. And I think part of the danger is that by coming into this carnival and starting to, you know, really wield this fire, like Pete's saying, there becomes a disinterest in the doings of life. And I go down to Old Town here, where we have all these little small businesses and coffee shops, and every single one of them has a help wanted sign. You know, maybe it's COVID, maybe it's just the overall dissatisfaction with the way the system feels to kind of suck our energy. But I think people are more willing to have that control to screw up, but have that big teddy bear possible, than it is to go and actually, you know, provide for their community, to drive an ambulance, to, you know, be a teacher, or to like whatever that might have been in the system of people taking care of each other. I feel like we have stepped into this place where people are being given this opportunity, and they're wielding that kind of live wire of the ups and the downs. And it's somehow more enticing. It's that it's got to be some part of our lizard brain, right? Like, there's that draw to the huge payout, that I'm going to go after the biggest, fattest, juiciest grasshopper, and I'm going to ignore, you know, all of this other stuff that I really should be tending to that could eat me or whatever. I'm going to go out there and try and get it. And yeah, I wonder at how these fixations, or even the access to a place where you can all of a sudden retire because you lucked out at a timing of buying your Bitcoin, you know, how that undermines the need for bus drivers and street sweepers and accountants and dentists, and like the whole society tends to kind of erode when now the money, which was like the reward for the contribution of your energy towards this bigger cultural consensus that we think we should have schools and streets that are swept, and instead we're just like given those raw materials to dive in, take responsibility, and craft our future. I haven't worked this year. I've been focused on crypto. I've been working with you guys. I've been putting my time in different places, but it's like, why would I go and like, lift the shovel when I can sit here and just study and, play those swings? And I don't know what the effect is, both psychologically and just materially, to the, well-being of our cultural fabric.
I'm going to say something that might be, I don't know, it feels controversial, but let's see what happens. So I've seen all those help wanted signs too. But I remember a couple of years ago, I'd walk down, I live in Boulder in Colorado. I'd walk down Pearl Street and I'd be like, do we need this many restaurants? Why are there so many freaking restaurants? Or you go on to like a corner and there'd be like 4 different fast food chains on one corner. And then you look at, people have each other pay each other to clean each other's houses, or all sorts of stuff that, to my mind, before all this happened, COVID, crypto, all of it, like, wasn't actually working very well. There was systems of oppression that were disguised by the name capitalism. And I don't think people were out in jobs thriving for the most part. And I heard someone recently say, when they were talking about financial system, it's kind of like when you get in credit card debt. Yeah, you can sure spend and look wealthy for a while, but at some point that's going to catch up to you. And that when we left the gold standard, we started getting into a kind of credit card debt. And at some point that's going to catch up. And so when I see all these help wanted signs, like, well, one, there's some fear, like, what's happening? Something's happening for sure. But also, like, it wasn't working. And I want people not to think they have to work to be worthy, but doing things that they love and they're passionate about. And we create systems based on our inspiration and our creativity and collaborating with people we want to collaborate with. And the fact that, creating a community of crypto people doesn't count as work, even though it might be improving people's lives and improving people's sanity, like, that tells me there's some flaws in our old way of thinking. And so maybe some shit does have to burn down and it's going to be uncomfortable, but I don't really think we want to go back, right?
It's almost hard to remember, even just 2 years ago, right? So yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think about, these are some big topics, right? Like, this is getting way bigger than crypto, which is not good or bad. Like, it's necessary. And maybe it just shows the impact of crypto or this idea. And it might even be, it's just a foreshadowing of this is how big it is. Like, these are the stakes, maybe, you know what I mean? And maybe that is kind of what underlies. So I think about this group of women I work with, they're all dentists. And, by most people's estimation, they would be doing fine financially. But crypto in that community, even as a woman, the ability to suddenly find yourself on a level playing field with men and people that have been in finance for years and years and years, because you understand crypto, or you understand this technology, or you understand blockchain and how it works and what these different tools can do. You see glimpses of that, where it's even myself, I look at it as price action, or I look at it as this overly simplified thing, right? In my seat, that's easy to do. It's like, oh, you just want to make some more money. And then you start kind of peeling back the onion, and even people that aren't disenfranchised, or people that you wouldn't think, have this need for financial equity still see something in this space that does hit on what they need, and what they need to feel free or to feel in control of not just their finances but their lives. So I don't know. I'm just kind of processing that live in real time and trying to figure out, what does all this mean and how do you stitch it all together? And can you do both? Can you participate and have the opportunity to build significant wealth and also be excited and contribute? Is that an okay position? Can you do that in a healthy way? Can you do that with a long-term? Can you do that as a long-term participant, right? Is there a place you can sit in all of that? And I don't know. I don't know yet.
Pete, you look like you're basking in the inspired glow of enlightenment. What angelic thoughts are coursing?
Well, it's hard to imagine living without money, but and so that's the fundamental thing with the chance of changing a financial system, is that it's based around money, right? So Bitcoin's a hope to not have to have money. And so does that mean you're lazy, or that you're a socialist, or that the lazy people are going to sit over there and starve and the workers are going to go over there and work and build their houses and live inside, and then the other people live outside? Yeah, that kind of means that to a certain extent. But we have so much around, think about people. So I don't know, I keep coming back to this, but these indigenous people around where I live, they built these fish traps in the ocean like 2,000 years ago, and they're still they're well built, right? So there was some craftsmanship to that, and they built these things that stand up to getting bashed by waves for 2,000 years, and they're still in perfect shape. And they literally fish, they're tide traps. So when the tide comes in, the fish comes in, and when the tide goes out, the fish are kind of stuck in these traps. And then I snorkel around there and scare all of them out of there with my spear gun. I don't catch any of them. It still works. So, but okay, so then those guys didn't need money, right? But they still had to put work in to build those damn traps. And that probably took a generation, maybe two, to build these traps. They're massive. It looks like a giant swept the bottom of the ocean, right? So I fly over, and so I've been figuring out how they did it. Is they took ropes, and then they had balsa. They made boats out of balsa logs, and so they took ropes at low tide and tied these balsa logs to the rocks, and then the tide came in and lifted these rocks up, and then they moved these things and then stacked them at low tide. That's my best estimate of how they did this so far. So, but that's a lot of work, and it's not just sitting on your butt. But then they have all this art, right? So when I'm setting up my landscaping and digging up my lot, I'm finding pottery. So they had art. So that means that they had time to sit around and make dolls of clay for their kids and stuff. And they had a lot of art. We find tons of it, tons and tons and tons of it. So they must have figured out a way to have food and to have whatever they need to survive and have art. Right. And it had nothing to do with the Fed. It had nothing to do with printing money. It had nothing to do with any of the crap that everything we have to do with. Just because they lived in an environment that they interacted with in a sustainable manner, and it kept it abundant. Abundant isn't an accident. Abundant is because we didn't get there yet. Right? We're not very good at sharing. We take all of it for ourselves. Mother Teresa was selfish, right? She did it because it made her feel good. She didn't do it because she was some saintly person. She did it because those little actions made her feel good. That's the fundamental of economics. We do it because it makes us feel good. And whatever feel good is, that's individual to the person, right? But everything we do is because it's a good thing. We don't really do things in a negative direction. Some small percentage of us do, but most of us do things because it's a positive motivator. So circling back around, it's hard to wrap your mind around a system that doesn't need money. And so it's hard to get the philosophy of Bitcoin. But if you can stay true to imagining something without money, then the idea of this technology can get bigger, and then you can let your mind go into other places that don't have anything to do with money. And then that's how you can kind of get people excited about a space that generates greed and fear and takes your money away from you. To a certain extent.
I love it, man. While you were speaking, you just had this glow on you. I just saw Pete the Prophet in the flesh, and I've got goosebumps, man. I think you just described a world that's like imprinted in our DNA that we all long to get back to. It's where we all came from, and I think it's where we're all yearning to get back to. And we're getting kind of close to an hour here, so I'm going to kind of throw the last little thought out there. But I've been reading this book. It's been really affecting, and it had this concept in it that they use this term steam engine time. And that's this kind of joke among science fiction writers that it seems like every couple of years, 4 or 5 authors will all write about the same topic, just like out of the blue. And they call it steam engine time because it's just a very strange thing that the steam engine appeared in history at this very specific moment. It was co-invented by like 4 or 5 different people in different parts of the world, but it just showed up at this specific time. I mean, the Romans had all of the materials and all of the knowledge, and they even had little toy steam engines that they had built, just kind of playing around. Like the Romans could have built a steam engine, but they didn't because it wasn't time yet. And so this idea of steam engine time is when we need a steam engine or when it's the right time, it will appear. And just, looking at the world and, hearing you, Pete, talk about this place where humans existed for so long, where we had abundance, where we had cooperation, where you worked your ass off building these huge fishing nets, but then you just sat back around the fire, enjoyed the fruits of those labors and, passed down the art to the next generation. I want to hope. And if we, enough of us, kind of get behind this steam engine, not as just another conveyance, but an actual, tool to realize that potential that we still have, then that's what excites me about crypto, is that maybe it's just crypto time. And we've been waiting this long to digitize and kind of reorient our values. And if we can, embrace this opportunity and have these types of conversations and collectively move away from the price action, move away from the composite man. I mean, honestly, I don't care anymore. I don't care. I don't want to be throwing rocks at whales. I don't want to be like, stirring the pot saying this is all us against them. I think it's us with us. It's not even a battle. It's just a pursuit. And so, yeah, we are the composite man. If you want to see who the composite man is, go look in the mirror and you have all of the embodiments, all the powers, all of the same, potential manifested in your little life. And so can we get behind something that actually gets us where we want to be? I don't know. And maybe this is what doing it feels like. Over.
Yeah, I think that last little thing you said, I think where I'm landing in this conversation for the last hour is back to something Leah said, like just people are starting to process their feelings. That's right. We're saying some things that you don't normally get on YouTube with internet friends and talk about. So, I think just coming around the idea that, yeah, maybe this is what it looks like, right? Just unpacking, we got to unpack some of this stuff and work through it and try to figure out, maybe it's going to be a little messy. Maybe it's not all neat and tidy. Maybe it's not black or white, one way or the other. And just try to navigate that and figure out how we can continue to push things forward, but also do it in a way that is sustainable, both personally and for our community. So I think you nailed it.
I'll just say, I think I'm ending in a similar place in this conversation. I got this image when you were talking, Pete, about like the circle of we. That was the line that came to my mind. And that when I was only myself, I had a lot of fear and I had to take care of me. And then when I joined a committed partnership, my circle of we grew, and there is no money exchange in that relationship, and it works beautifully. And that as that circle widens, it gives me a prototype of what it would be like to be in a collaborative world with no money. I just need a wider understanding of we. And that takes being with the fear that comes up when I imagine that. And I think we're doing the work, and crypto just happens to be an interesting catalyst or mirror or lens to do that through.
I love that. Well, I cannot thank you guys enough for just every time I get to interact with you. I just feel that my life is enriched, and I like that we ended on the circle of we. And yeah, we are the composite man, but we are also the agents of change. And I'm getting a bumper sticker that says enoughness, because I believe in that. I want to spread that. I want to share that. And so, yeah, thank you guys for sharing this time with me. I think that's
Yeah, thank you.
fit to print.
Thank you for bringing us here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy your little
See you
pocket of
guys.
the world. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Take care.